So let's take a few moments to talk about lists. Some of our users have been using our older platform and are familiar with terms like dynamic lists and static lists, but those terms are no longer prominent here. Instead, we are seeing my lists and custom lists. So let's start by discussing what the difference between my lists and custom lists is. Under my lists, you can see lists where you yourself decide the criteria or the filters by which Vainu then narrows down the eventual results. But Vainu is always the one who keeps the list updated based on your criteria. So whenever there's a new company that matches those criteria, Vainu will be adding them to your list, and vice versa. Whenever a company no longer fulfills those criteria, then Vainu will make sure that those companies are removed from that list. So you only get to set up the filters, whereas Vainu takes care of updating the list. Custom lists, on the other hand, is the same thing as static lists used to be, which means you are responsible for updating these lists. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a list that you have uploaded from somewhere else. Maybe you had a spreadsheet that had a bunch of companies and you uploaded that list to Vainu, or maybe you have hand-picked companies through the search function and you have added those to one of these custom lists. It'll still be you removing companies from these lists and adding companies to these lists. Vainu won't be actually touching any of those lists at any point. So that's the difference between these two categories. There might be also a third category called legacy lists, which is something for the users of the old platform. It's the place where they see lists that have been migrated from the old platform to new platform, so they can still see all the same companies and all the same results. Now, a couple of things that you might need to know about lists. When you click on these three little dots at the end of the list name, you'll get three options what you can do with lists. You can duplicate lists, which is a nice way of creating a copy of an existing list so that you don't have to create a bunch of filters over and over again. You can start with something that looks similar to a different list and then maybe make one or two modifications to have a different list with slightly different criteria. Share means you can share that list with anyone within your organization. Now, it is entirely up to you whether you share it only with one person or with the whole organization. And also you can decide whether you want the people you've shared the list with to actually be able to modify the list, or if they only have basically read writes where they can see the list contents but cannot touch the actual filters. And finally, there's the delete option where you can also delete the list. You can find the same options here as well from within the list page. The download button on each list page allows you to get a CSV export of the list contents. We'll take a closer look at that in a future video, as well as the send to option, which allows you to send the companies on this list to your CRM. Also worth noting that you can obviously rename lists just by clicking on here anywhere on the list title and typing a new title like so. The results on your list are usually arranged by what we call the Vainu score, which basically tells you how much data do we have on these companies. So the companies on top are the ones where we have the most data available. But you can also list companies based on the company name, so in an alphabetical order, or based on their revenue or the employee number, giving you an idea on which companies on your list are actually the biggest ones or the smallest ones. By default, we are seeing companies in this grid view, but you can also have a list view if that makes more sense to you. So these are all the basic things related to lists, and in a later video we'll take a closer look on how to actually use filters to start building your list and narrowing down the results based on the criteria that you have selected.